This was not the tyrant people expected. Not bare skin, not a naked monster charging through dust. Something stranger. A massive predator moving through a cold Cretaceous forest with feathers along its body. This was Yutyrannus, a feathered tyrant. A dinosaur related to the tyrannosaur line, but unlike the version most people imagine when they think of giant meat-eaters, it still had teeth, it still had power, it still had the body of a predator, but it also carried one of the most important surprises in dinosaur science: feathers. And that changed the way we picture tyrants forever. Hello, explorers. I'm Landon Brooks, and welcome back to the Dinosaur Dude. Today, we are taking a look at one of the most surprising tyrannosaur relatives ever discovered, and the feathers that made this predator impossible to ignore. If you enjoy cinematic dinosaur content like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment because these creatures only get more dangerous. Yutyrannus means feathered tyrant, and that name is not just dramatic, it points directly to what made this dinosaur so important. Yutyrannus was a tyrannosauroid, part of the broader family line that eventually leads toward more famous predators like Tyrannosaurus. But it did not look like the old image of a giant scaly reptile. Fossils of Yutyrannus preserved evidence of feather-like covering, not wings for flight, not delicate bird feathers made for soaring, but filament-like feathers on a large predatory dinosaur. That matters because it shows that feathers were not limited to tiny bird-like dinosaurs. Even a large predator could carry them. A tyrant could be feathered and still be terrifying. Yutyrannus should not be treated like a bird. But it should not be treated like a classic movie tyrannosaur either. It lived much earlier than Tyrannosaurus rex. It belonged to the tyrannosauroid branch, but it was not the same animal. That distinction matters. Yutyrannus had the body plan of a large meat-eating dinosaur, a powerful head, strong legs, a long balancing tail, and jaws built for predation. But the feathers changed the silhouette. They softened the outline. They made the animal look stranger, less like the old museum monster image, more like something from a colder, rougher Cretaceous world. This was not a bird pretending to be a predator, and it was not T-Rex with a costume. It was its own kind of tyrant. The feathers of Yutyrannus matter because they force us to rethink scale. For a long time, people often imagined feathers mostly on small dinosaurs, fast animals, bird-like animals, creatures close to the origin of flight. But Yutyrannus was large. That makes the discovery harder to ignore. If an animal this big could preserve feather evidence, then feathers were not just a small dinosaur detail. They were part of a much wider dinosaur story. The exact purpose is still debated. They may have helped with insulation. They may have played a role in display. They may have changed how individuals recognized each other. But whatever their function, they changed the image. A predator could be covered in feathers and still be built for danger. Feathers did not make it harmless. They made it real. Yutyrannus lived in early Cretaceous China, and the world around it may not have looked like the hot, tropical dinosaur world many people imagine. Its environment could be cool, seasonal, filled with forests, volcanic landscapes, lakes, and cold air moving through the trees. In that kind of world, feathers make sense. Not as decoration only, not as wings, but as part of survival. A large predator moving through cold mornings would still need to manage heat. Young animals would need protection, bodies would need insulation, and a feathered covering may have helped Yutyrannus live in a climate where scales alone might not tell the whole story. The tyrant was not standing in a fantasy snowstorm. It was part of a real ecosystem where feathers may have mattered. The mistake is thinking feathers make Yutyrannus soft. They do not. This was still a theropod predator. It had jaws, teeth, muscle, balance, and the ability to move through its environment looking for opportunity. A feathered body does not remove danger, it changes how that danger looks. Imagine seeing movement between the trees, not scales shining in the sun, but a dark feathered shape sliding through cold mist, a head lowering, eyes watching, breath visible in the air. Yutyrannus may not have been the largest tyrannosaur relative ever to live, but it did not need to be. Its power came from being both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. A predator you recognize, and then immediately have to rethink. Yutyrannus changed more than one dinosaur's image. It changed the conversation. Because when a large tyrannosauroid preserves feather evidence, it raises bigger questions. How widespread were feathers in this group? Which species had them? Which lost them? Which kept them only in certain parts of the body? And how different did famous predators look from the versions people grew up imagining? Yutyrannus does not answer every question. It does not prove that every tyrannosaur looked the same way. It does not give us a perfect picture of every feather, color, or pattern. But it does prove something important. The dinosaur world was stranger than the old version, and tyrants could wear feathers. The full name, Yutyrannus huali, is sometimes translated as beautiful feathered tyrant. That name fits because this animal sits between ideas that seem like they should not belong together. Beautiful, feathered, tyrant. A predator does not have to be ugly to be dangerous, a feathered animal does not have to be delicate, and a dinosaur can be more complex than the labels we put on it. Yutyrannus was not important because it made tyrannosaurs less frightening. It was important because it made them more interesting, more textured, more alive. It gave the tyrant line a different face, one with teeth, weight, feathers, and cold breath in the air. A reminder that prehistory was not simpler than the modern world. It was just lost. Yutyrannus was a predator that changed expectations. A tyrannosauroid with feathers. A large meat-eater from a colder Cretaceous world. A dinosaur that proved the old image of scaly tyrants was never the whole story. It still had jaws, power, and danger. But it also had something many people never expected to see on a predator that size: a feathered body. Join us next time as we explore a classic dinosaur with one of the most unusual hand weapons in prehistory.